Yeah, so this was a really interesting thread on Twitter going on, a bit of a debate that happened yesterday between Matt Walsh actually and Kim Iversen, and then others too who got involved. But this is a little bit weird because I actually found myself agreeing with Kim, at least in the beginning, more than I usually do on an issue specifically that I find her takes to be pretty bad on. So this was interesting. Let's start here. I see this. She says, "Look at the triggered snowflake," responding to Matt Walsh. So I'm like, what the hell's going on? What exactly has been going down? Let's look at where this all started. Because again, this isn't actually a pretty interesting little debate going off on Twitter. And I do have to say that I respect Kim Iversen for standing up to these right-wing losers, these transphobes. So here's Matt who says, "Let me introduce you to Dr. Scott Moser, who cut the breasts off of adolescent girls. Many surgeons across the country will and do inflict top surgery on minors. Moser assures that he follows very strict guidelines before performing double mastectomies on children." So there's this guy that they're trying to fearmonger about who provides gender affirming care for transgender people. Anyway, let's see. Kim Iversen responds and she says, "It's their body, their choice. If their parents or anyone is pressuring them, let them live with that and take it up with them later. It's none of our business how to choose, or it's none of our business how others choose to live their lives." And just right there, you think, hell yeah, based Kim Iversen. What exactly is the problem here? This seems great. This is exactly correct. This is exactly the argument that I make, especially to these right-wing losers like Matt Walsh, who pretend to care so much about family choice and making sure that the government does not intervene and making sure that the parents have the right to raise their kids and raise their family the way they want to in accordance with their values. So it's, again, super hypocritical of someone like Matt Walsh to have that opinion. But then when it comes to transgender minors who make that decision between their doctor and their parents and decide that that's the correct medical procedure to go about treating the condition of gender dysphoria, it's totally hypocritical, as I said. So right off the bat, Kim Iversen is, like I said, totally correct. And we've disagreed with Kim a lot, especially on trans issues. So I was personally shocked to see this. Of course, we're going to keep going here in a second and see some other, additions she made to this argument, which I think made it a little bit weaker, at least optically. But just to start off here, this is 110% correct.
Right. And this is why I wanted to qualify at the beginning, because, of course, we're going to have our fun later. But actually, considering the amount of criticism that we've lobbed at Kim, and I think correctly, right? I think that she has made comments that I think you could 100% correctly label as transphobic and not helpful and not something that I would like to see from a media figure. That's why we've criticized them. But you're 100% right, Gavin. This is a perfect argument to make, particularly to her audience, right? And I think it'll be really salient to them. And it's the kind of argument that, I always start off, like Gavin, you mentioned, because we're Midwesterners, we obviously, we don't live in a bubble. We have a fucking exposure to all kinds of people. But one thing that I think is a real through line throughout the Midwest is this concept of freedom and this idea of civil autonomy and I am my own person and I can make my own mind up and my own decisions. And so when you find people who aren't necessarily inclined to be on the left side of things, that's the most salient way to get to them. It's just oh yeah, it's their body, that's their choice. Same with the abortion issue, right? In Kansas, overwhelmingly people came out and said, well, that's up to that woman and her doctor, whatever they want to do. You can have your own opinion about it. You don't have to get an abortion. It's not a vote on mandating abortions, right? Just as the same way that these people try and frame it as they're going to do this to every child. You're not. It's no, you're not. This is if your child is trans, then then this is a discussion that you can have with your doctor. But the fear mongering aside, I think she boils it down really, really well. It's none of our business how others choose to live their lives, 100%. And everybody should be able to consult with their doctor without fear of fucking societal revolt, basically, or repercussions.
Absolutely correct. Thank you also, by the way, Dead Fist, for the $2. No question here. Just sending some money. Let's go. Well, thank you so much, Dead Fist. Really appreciate that. And also Karen, we have invited Kim on the show multiple times, never heard back. So, just for what it is, we have invited Kim on the show, have not heard back. But yeah, let's keep going here. Comment. Exactly. Let's keep going here, though, because again, this ain't it, guys. This is just the beginning, actually. So, of course, this is what starts the beef. Kim Iversen responds to Matt Walsh. Of course, because Matt Walsh and Kim Iversen largely run in right-wing circles at this point, her tweet was not received well by those audiences, these kind of people. So let's go back to the original thread. And then here's this person, Lauren Chin. Looks like she's a TP USA contributor. That's Turning Points USA. So basically just your average typical right-wing shill. She responds to Kim and says, their body, their choice does not apply to minors. Do you think children can consent to sex? If not, what makes consent to permanently disfiguring surgery any different? And again, before we get into Kim Iversen's response to this, this is absolutely ridiculous argument. A medical procedure has nothing to do with sex. You know, that's like saying, oh, can children consent to sex? If not, they can't get heart surgery. What? That's ridiculous. Of course, they can get a surgery that benefits them if they suffer from a medical procedure, or a medical condition, which gender dysphoria is. Doing trans-affirming surgery is not, mutilating or disfiguring your body. It's simply a medical solution to a medical condition. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just a medical solution, like I said. So bringing sex into the conversation in the first place is weird. It's, clearly kind of a straw man. This doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's not like, even in the same ballpark. Having sex with a fucking minor is not the same thing as a doctor saying, yes, I will, perform this gender affirming surgery on said transgender minor. There's just no equivalence there. But yeah, then did you want to?
Oh yeah, I'll just butt into this as well and say that people try and make these kind of straw mans all the time because they're trying so hard to make the trans community synonymous with child predators, and I just think that point can't be lost here, right? The reason that she brings up children consenting to sex is because they are very consciously, guys, trying to create a through line between the entire trans community, even trans children. And make them synonymous with child predators, and also make anybody that would provide them with medical care akin to a predator as well, right? This would be like the relationship, it's very strange, but I just, obviously I think you're correct here. This is like apples and oranges, right? Just because you're dealing with somebody's like, sex organs when they're, underage, that doesn't have anything to do with the like, emotional, cognitive, all these developmental issues that we realize, if a 28-year-old dude is trying to pressure a 14-year-old girl into having sex, that's going to impose trauma on her, right? That's why we don't allow fucking children to have sex with minors. You know what imposes trauma on children? Forcing them to endure puberty in a fucking gender that they do not fucking identify with, right? So this is, they're just apples to oranges, but I just wanted to identify that it's not like a fucking accident that they're always trying to use analogies that make trans people look like fucking sex criminals. Even though, as Gavin and I constantly say, we all know who the biggest sex criminals are, and that is, cis white men, 100% the most often convicted for sex crimes. So, PSA.
Yeah, and also Catholic priests. But yeah, absolutely. And of course, as Daniel points out too, these people that make this argument against trans affirming care for minors will pretty predictably then turn around and argue for circumcision, which is actual genital mutilation, which is actual bodily disfigurement, and which is not any sort of a solution to any sort of a medical problem. It's all just antiquated tradition, complete bullshit. It's not based in science. It was originally created to stop people from masturbating. At least that was the idea. Clearly that didn't work out very well. But yeah, genital mutilation, circumcision is actually genital mutilation. It has no medical purpose whatsoever, unlike, gender affirming care, which does.
That's actually a great fucking point. And I will go out on a limb and just say, as a circumcised person, probably wouldn't have made that fucking choice by myself. If I 100% would not have ever chosen that. Like, if I, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just a weird thing to me. One, my parents aren't even fucking religious. Okay. They don't even believe in they might abstractly believe in God. I don't fucking know. We never sat down and chatted about it. That was how ingrained in this culture. It's just like considered like a medical necessity. Like, they'll try and talk you out of it if you tell them that you don't want to circumcise your child. You have to be like, no, fuck you. You're not doing this to my child. That's how ingrained in our culture it is. That's a perfect point. I guarantee you that Matt Walsh is the kind of LOL uncut stand-up. That's fucking hilarious, bro. But yeah, I guarantee you Matt Walsh is the kind of guy that would hella get circumcised. 10 out of 10. I place a fucking $100 bill on the table and be like, drop your drawers, Matt. Let's fucking put up or shut up, bro.
Let's see what Kim Iversen responded with. Because again, so far Kim is super based in this thread. I totally agree with her, despite our huge disagreements on this exact subject matter. It seems like we're responding to a totally different person right now. But again, it is about to take a bit of an unfortunate turn. Again, Lauren Chin poses this question: do you think children can consent to sex? And here's where it gets a little bit weird. Here's where it gets a little bit unfortunate, at least for Kim, at least optically speaking. So Kim responds and says, minors actually can consent to sex. Each state has its own laws on this. And as you can see from the amount of quote tweets, it's a brutal fucking ratio, guys. It's a brutal ratio. She's getting absolutely destroyed on Twitter for this statement. And, obviously just on its face value, you can kind of understand why. As Lauren Chin responded, she says, what the fuck, Kim? And that got almost 6,000 likes. Kim's original response got only 163 likes. So again, this was, needless to say, not a popular take among Kim's audience or pretty much anyone else listening. And you kind of have to understand why, again, given the way she phrased this. I don't think this was the, most smart way to go about responding. Clearly, she's just falling directly into the trap that Lauren Chin set for her without responding with a little bit more tact, with a little bit more, thought put towards the optics of the situation. So again, clearly this is not a very good response. Minors actually can consent to sex. Each state has its own laws on this. And of course, there's a lot of ways to interpret this. If you want to interpret it in the most charitable light, you could talk about how, well, yeah, technically two minors can consent to sex with one another. Like if you're both 16 or something, I don't think it's illegal for you to have sex. I mean, or else like every high schooler would be put in jail. So clearly that's not illegal. Also, yes, technically in some states, the age of consent is like 16. So that makes you a minor. And technically it's not illegal to have sex with a 16-year-old if you live in one of those states. So, technically she's correct. Technically that is true. In some states, especially, some states with lower age of consent laws, minors can technically legally consent to sex. So she's not wrong, but damn, you could not have phrased this in a worse way. Because what do you think is going to happen? Of course, everyone's going to quote tweet you and just take all the context out of the situation, completely remove any of the argument you were trying to make and reduce it down to this statement, which makes you look like you're pro pedophilia or something. Again, from an optics perspective, not a good look.
Oh, dude, it's a terrible look. And that's kind of what I wanted to allude to at the beginning, is the fact that, like, I in Kim's brain, I have to be honest and say I do know what she's talking about right here. She's saying that technically, yes, you can be a minor at 16, and in a lot of backwater hillbilly states, that you're allowed to have sex with somebody who's 40 if you want to, and they can't do anything about it, even though you can't vote or do anything else like drink alcohol. It's a weird thing, and it's definitely predicated on like some old school things that I don't think this country should be proud of and maybe should resolve and update. But she's not entirely wrong, right? And I think in her like civil libertarian mind, this is the next like jump to that argument. But I can't get out of my mind, right? Everybody knows in chess, if you've played chess for any meaningful amount of time, and you're playing against somebody who has no idea what the fuck they're doing, there's like a 5-move strategy where you can just like goat somebody into just like taking their queen and or their king, and it's checkmate, right? You like move boop boop boop, and then you slide your bishop over, and it's like they're still hidden behind your row of pawns, and it's over, right? And I can't help but get that image in my brain when Lauren Chen sets the trap for Kim Iversen. It's like she's entered the chess master. She's like, oh, okay, sit down. You're new to chess around here. You move your people. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Checkmate, guy. You already lost. It doesn't matter. We already told you guys at the beginning of the stream, nuance doesn't exist on the internet. Sometimes I forget, and I'll try and give like a really nuanced take about something. I'm like, oh, fuck. I scorned myself. Nuance doesn't exist on the internet. Just chest beating and bravado. That's the only thing that works here. And yeah, she would require a big leap from an unsympathetic audience, and that's never the position that you can put yourself in when you're debating. Right now, she's already put herself in the position of the challenger. You need to flip the script back on her and say something that she enjoys, that flips it back around, and say, ha ha. That's the only way to debate it. It's like, hark, like, fucking, I got you. And sure, people will say that you're just doing like whataboutism and all this kind of stuff. And that's how you know you're in a good debate. Anyway, right now, what she did is she just set herself up for massive failure to get ratio. 163 simps were all that would come to try and rescue her from this brutal, brutal fucking body that she's taking, especially right now when her entire audience is really hot to trot on the whole anti-pedophile thing, because they've been really, brewed up on that, given, the anti-trans rhetoric that we were just talking about. So yeah, this was just a horrible, horrible pivot as far as I'm concerned, and it's something that she could have really easily sidestepped. Like, maybe she just was like not really thinking about it, but God, it would be hard to not think about it when you're tweeting that. Like Gavin and I, we tweet pretty much off the cuff, but I've never been like, minors can consent to sex. Actually, I don't think I want to put that into the ether without a lot of like fucking like, Now, how do I rephrase that and say, well, every state has their own laws that I agree should be revised. My point is here to fuck you,
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's especially unhelpful because now everyone that reads this is just going to think, oh, all these people advocating for trans rights also are advocating for, the age of consent to be lowered, or for there to be more, access to minors if you're an adult sexually. So it's just a kind of a fucking clusterfuck all around, frankly, which is unfortunate given that this is like the first time we've fucking agreed with Kim Iversen in a while on her previous point. And then she had to go and defend her previous point in the worst possible way. Again, you can understand what she's saying and have a nuanced understanding, and I think that's fine. But we also have to understand the way this came off. And like I said, I mean, if you're going to be arguing with Matt Walsh under his thread, one of the most popular right-wingers with 1 million followers, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen when you post this? Like, did you not think for literally 5 seconds about how to phrase this? Come on, this is ridiculous. Anyway, let's keep looking. Lauren Chin again says, what the fuck, Kim, and absolutely destroys her with a ratio. Kim Iversen goes on to say 16 is the age of consent in most states. Lauren responds, I asked about children consenting to sex, and your answer was yes, which, I mean, yeah, that's kind of a reduction, but sure. Kim says, actually, my answer was minors can consent to sex. Each state has its own laws on this. We have been talking about people under 18. I think you're changing the subject to something else. And yeah, it is true. Obviously, Lauren is, reading this and taking this in the worst possible faith. She's, interpreting it in the most uncharitable possible light in order to paint Kim Iversen and the pro, transgender crowd as a bunch of, pedophiles. But again, it's kind of unfortunate that Kim just served her up that opportunity on a silver platter and made it really easy for her to do exactly that. And again, as you can see here, now she only has 36 likes right now on this tweet. This one has over 1,500. So it was not a good day yesterday for Kim Iversen on Twitter. I can only imagine what her mentions look like. I can only imagine all of the tweets she was getting and all of the hate she was getting. And again, it's a little bit unfortunate because she was actually completely correct about this answer. It's just that she did not defend her line of logic in a very good way.
Yeah, and I did go down a rabbit hole, and it is true that this country does have some fucked up consent laws in some of our states. Like in some in some states that you wouldn't even think. Like in Washington, did you know that you can be 16 and legally fuck a 12-year-old and you're still like in the clear? It's not against the law. Like, do you know you're in like 6th grade when you're 12, guys? Think about that. When you're 16, you could drive a car. Sometimes you're a fucking junior in high school. Like, sophomore in high school, something like that. I don't know. I'm just like, fuck, that's disgusting. So anyway, we do have some problematic laws as far as consent goes, for sure. But I think it's obvious to give Kim the obvious benefit of the doubt, which she's clarifying at the end and nobody cares about by that point. And obviously she intended from the beginning. She's talking about minors consenting to have sex with one another, and when she says 16 is the average age of consent, she actually fucks herself on that argument a little bit, because when you turn 16, you can have sex with adults then. And so she actually does kind of fuck that up, because a lot of states have laws where, like, in South Carolina, have sex with a 12-year-old if you're not fucking older than 16. And like I just said, and all kinds of stuff. So she does kind of blur the lines about whether or not she's talking about having sex with an adult or a younger person, because of her. And what I would just charitably, assume is a lack of sophistication on our consent laws. But if you're going to go bark up that tree, you should be ready to fucking, come with some compelling arguments. So she's like, I think you're talking about something else. And it's like, well, no, when you said average age of consent is 16 in most states, that's when you can have sex with adults. And are you saying you're down with that? It's not a good look. Even when I'm trying to be charitable, I'm like, oh, you backed yourself into some problems just as I'm doing my, like, debate review bro thing. You barked up the wrong tree with this completely. But even in a charitable light, it doesn't look good. But obviously your audience is going to take it in the least charitable light, which makes it look even worse. And that's why, people are not coming to rescue you as far as your ratio is concerned.
Yeah, maybe it'll make her think twice about the kind of audience she's cultivated with how this all went down. Because, yeah, people are immediately trying to cancel her, trying to act like she's a pro-pedophile. When, again, despite the fact that this was worded very poorly, that's not what she was saying, at least in my opinion. And let's look at her feed, because she has been, responding to some of this criticism. Again, going back and forth with some people. Parents should get to decide one way or the other what's best for their child. You should be allowed to prevent your child from gender affirming care, puberty blockers, and surgery, no matter what others think around you. So there's kind of the opposite coin. I guess now she's giving the other argument, probably trying to appease some of these crazy people in her audience. Here she put out a video about it, trying to catch his attention, maybe stir up a debate. And again, this has 30 likes. Sorry to play the numbers game, but usually Kim has more likes than that on her tweets, just saying. It seems like she really has taken some heat for this. I imagine she lost some followers. I don't know how many she had beforehand, but I imagine she lost quite a few followers because of this, which, is fine. I'd rather her speak her mind. Obviously we lose fucking followers all the time. But again, it's just unfortunate the way she had to word that. Jesus Christ. Here she comes and says, informed consent, emphasis on informed seems to be the key. So again, arguing with more people, responding to a lot of people. Here's another one where she's responding to this guy. You can just scroll down for a while, and she's basically responding to her critics and getting a little bit in her feelings, I think. Here's the same argument about circumcision. So yeah, it goes on. Clearly she was dogpiled on Twitter, and a lot of haters coming at her. And again, it's not, you have to understand why. If you're going to post something like this, you have to expect to get some backlash. It's kind of like when a week or two ago, Hunter Avalon made a tweet saying that we should destigmatize pedophilia. And it's like, yeah, can you really expect to get anything other than dogpiled for saying that? Like, the point he was making was that, pedophilia is a real condition. People that suffer from it should be treated. They should, feel safe to seek care for their problem. And that if there's a stigma around it, then people are less likely to seek that care and, solve the root of the problem, which is true technically. But again, if you're going to put out a tweet that says we should destigmatize pedophiles, like, what the fuck do you think is going to happen? And that's basically exactly what happened here with Kim, where, she's trying to make a point that's not entirely incorrect. But in the process, she worded this really, really clumsily and resulted in a lot of backlash, which, again, you have to expect.